Politics by Aristotle, a treatise on government, translated by William Ellis.
Read and presented by George Petropagianakis.
Book 1. Chapter 5.
But whether any person is such by nature, and whether it is advantageous and just for anyone to be a slave or no, or whether all slavery is contrary to nature, shall be considered hereafter. Note that it is difficult to determine it upon general principles, or to understand it from matters of fact, for that some should govern and others be governed is not only necessary but useful, and from the hour of their birth some are marked out for those purposes and others for the other. And there are many species of both sorts, and the better those are who are governed, the better also is the government, as for instance of man, rather than the brute creation. For the more excellent the materials are with which the work is finished, the more excellent certainly is the work. And wherever there is a governor and a governed, there certainly is some work produced. For whatsoever is composed of many parts, which jointly become one, whether conjunct or separate, evidently show the marks of governing and governed. And this is true of every living thing, in all nature, nay, even in some things which partake not of life, as in music. But this probably would be a disquisition too foreign to our present purpose. Every living thing, in the first place, is composed of soul and body. Of these, the one is by nature the governor, the other the governed. Now, if we would know what is natural, we ought to search for it in those subjects in which nature appears most perfect, and not in those which are corrupted. We should therefore examine into a man who is most perfectly formed, both in soul and body, in whom this is evident. For in the depraved and vicious, the body seems to rule rather than the soul, on account of their being corrupt and contrary to nature. We may then, as we affirm, perceive in an animal the first principles of hereditary and political government. For the soul governs the body as the master governs his slave. The mind governs the appetite with a political or a kingly power, which shows that it is both natural and advantageous. That the body should be governed by the soul, and the pathetic part by the mind, and that part which is possessed of reason. But to have no ruling power or an improper one is hurtful to all, and this holds true not only of man, but of other animals also. For tame animals are naturally better than wild ones, and it is advantageous that both should be under subjection to man, for this is productive of their common safety. So is it naturally with the male and the female. The one is superior, the other inferior. The one governs, the other is governed. And the same rule must necessarily hold good with respect to all mankind. Those men, therefore, who are as much inferior to others as the body is to the soul, are to be thus disposed of as the proper use of them is their bodies, in which their excellence consists. And if what I have said be true, they are slaves by nature, and it is advantageous to them to be always under government. He then is by nature formed a slave, who is qualified to become the chattel of another person. And on that account is so, and who has just reason enough to know that there is such a faculty, without being endued with the use of it for other animals, have no perception of reason, but are entirely guided by appetite. And indeed they vary very little in their use from each other, for the advantage which we receive, both from slaves and tame animals, arises from their bodily strength administering to our necessities. For it is the intention of nature to make the bodies of slaves and freemen different from each other, that the one should be robust for their necessary purposes, the others erect, useless indeed for what slaves are, employed in, but fit for civil life, which is divided into the duties of war and peace. Though these rules do not always take place, for slaves have sometimes the bodies of freemen, sometimes the souls. If then it is evident that if some bodies are as much more excellent than others as the statues of the gods excel the human form, everyone will allow that. The inferior ought to be slaves to the superior. And if this is true, with respect to the body, it is still juster to determine in the same manner when we consider the soul, though it is not so easy to perceive the beauty of the soul as it is of the body. Since then, some men are slaves by nature, and others are freemen, it is clear that where slavery is advantageous to anyone, then it is just to make him a slave.